Thank you, Jared and Gary. Welcome to the Midweek Tackle. So much footy news to get stuck into. My name's Lauren Wood. I'm joined by my colleagues Glenn McFarlane and John Ralph from the Herald Sun. But boys, it's my turn tonight. I'm taking the new ball, kicking us off with Jeremy Cameron, which could arguably be one of the stories of the season as he closes in on 100 goals. Now, I've had a look. I'm getting in early. He's still got 31 goals to go. But spoke to Grant Thomas yesterday on this story, and he is warning that it could be a disaster waiting to happen, both for the AFL and for Geelong. Of course, he has lived this experience with Fraser Gehrig back in 2004, preliminary final against Port Adelaide Football Park. They had all the momentum, St Kilda. Then, of course, the G-Train lobbed the big one. The crowds naturally swarmed. They had to get him off the ground, completely halted the momentum and basically, as Grant puts it, put an end to St Kilda's hopes not only in that game, but, of course, cost them a grand final berth, maybe even a premiership. So things are shaping, Ralphie, for Jeremy Cameron to do this. Maybe not in the home and away season with 4 games remaining, but this could be MCG final, as he said, disaster potentially waiting to happen for Geelong in a momentum shift. Yeah,
so we were all watching at the SCG as Lance Franklin kicked his 1,000th goal. It was in March. It was a joyous occasion. It didn't really matter in terms of the swing of a game. I was at that contest at Footy Park, you know, a young, wet behind the ears reporter, and he absolutely changed the game. So Fraser goes off, so it's 2 goals to zip, 19 inside 50s to 4. The game absolutely flipped on its head after this occasion.
Here we go.
I think Stevie Baker's father even ran out on that ground as well. So Port kicks 4 quick goals after that break. It felt like the break went 20 minutes. They took forever to get him off. Sean Burgoyne eventually drags down Brent Guerra with a match-saving tackle. St Kilda loses. So St Kilda and Port Adelaide would still concede the day. That costs St Kilda a very rare grand final spot. The AFL's going to have a really hard think about whether they say, please don't run on the ground, but thinks everyone will, or actually says to people, you will not get on this ground if this bloke kicks 100 goals.
Well, Grant Thomas warned the AFL, he says at the time, for added security and a bit more of a plan around what to do. He says it was refuted. We know he probably wasn't the most popular man at AFL HQ at the time. But I've spoken to the MCG today because, as I said, it could be a final. They are saying that they will be ready to work with the AFL and, of course, Geelong about whatever is going to be required. Now, the AFL think it is still a little bit too early, but there are protocols around this sort of thing, Macca. There would be, you know, added security and a plan to maybe get him off, although, as well as what Grant put it today...
in theory, isn't it? It's hard.
You get the player off the ground, you know, you maybe instruct the other players to surround the player, get them off the ground, but as he put it with Fraser that night, not only then was he faced with the break in the game, but his player was taken off up a tunnel and they didn't really know where he was.
No, exactly. Is there any heightened concern, given we've seen some really, you know, some threats in recent times to Michael Voss and Simon Goodwin in recent times? What can you tell us about that?
Well, I mean, no one is really willing to say it directly at the moment, but I think it is certainly a layer that's going to be considered in this, not only with what the game has faced this season, but I think the climate that we are in. I mean, 2004 was a very different time.
Sure.
2008 happened again in a normal season game with Lance Franklin, of course. But I think in this era, and that's what Tomo is talking about in this story that's in tomorrow's newspaper, is around, you know, not only do you have people these days, as we saw with Buddy a couple of years ago, Ralphie, that are really there to celebrate the player. Everyone's got a smartphone now and everyone wants their moment, the video, you know, kissing the turf in the middle of the MCG on what potentially could be grand final day.
Yeah, everyone wants to be a hero. We've also seen, let's face it, the doomsday scenario. We've seen guns brought into the MCG this very year. So, again, I think we're not quite at this stage yet, but at some stage in the near future, and it might be this year, the AFL will have, you know, 300 security guards ringing this stadium. And let's hope it happens more. Let's hope we have more players kicking the ton. But, yeah, it's a quirky one, but it's also a really serious one for the AFL.
It is. It's going to be interesting to see how they play it, whether they go for a bit of reverse psychology of, hey, everyone run on and, you know, hope that people don't. But as I say, as those big finals loom, it's going to be one in the spotlight. Another that has been in the spotlight in the last few days, Ralphie, of course, has been Toby Green. What was the timeline on, I guess, the decision to clear him of that kick?
That's right. So it's a weird one. He admitted today that he was basically a dirty player and he just had to acknowledge that that's who he was. He's like the scorpion, it's in my nature. So he's cleared by the MRO for that incident with Dane Rampy, but not before a really weird chain of events. The vision was missed by the ARC spotters, which is almost unprecedented. They look at absolutely everything and they give it to Michael Christian to assess. So it was 2 days after the game, actually yesterday afternoon, where Christian was asked to look at it. Here it is there. So it's not unprecedented because Tuke Miller was investigated 2 days after a squirrel grip and he was suspended midweek a couple of years back. But the MRO judged this as intentional, but as they would have looked at it, there was zero force. It wasn't that Dane Rampy was a bit upset. He didn't react at all. So as much as it was a horrible look, it just was not the kind of penalty that you could assess him with. You could call it attempted kicking, but look, that's just not something that happens these days under the MRO.
I personally wouldn't have been shocked if he'd even just been fined for it. I think we talk about potential to cause serious injury, but the new football boss, Greg Swan, spoke about exactly why Toby was cleared on AFL 360 a short time ago. Here's what he said.
The thing that saved him is there was no contact. So, you know, it was obviously it's intentional, but he doesn't touch him or he doesn't make any contact. So there's no penalty on that basis. So that's under the rules as they are. That's the right decision.
So Foxtel and Channel 7 tonight are outraged by a side story, what they see as unauthorised access to broadcast vision. So an AFL House and Channel 9 employee put that vision to air on Footy Classified last night. So their view is that this vision was their vision and should not have been used by anyone else, and they're not sure how it got out of AFL House or how it was leaked by another football club. So their view is this is a $600 million a year enterprise. That's their investment. That's their broadcast vision going to a rival network. So the AFL says it's investigating. It's called it a process error. I'm not sure that's going to satisfy a couple of parties that are paying $4.5 billion. So we'll wait and see exactly where that investigation goes.
Big dollars there. Big dollars when it comes to contracts to Macca. And Toby Green, there's, as I say, issues on the field for him, but you've got a contract update for us.
Yeah, he might be in the bad books with some, but certainly not with GWS. They are looking at adding an extra year onto his contract. We know that he's in a contract until the end of 2026. Over summer, that'll be quietly rolled out to 2027. So that's going to be really interesting. He goes on again, and if you look at that, he'll then become the first giant to get to the 300 games. That'll push him into that bracket. Lachie Whitfield's the only one that can stop him in that sense, but I think it works pretty well. I think he's 32, 2 days before this year's grand final. He might get the ultimate celebration, mightn't he? But he'll certainly get that extra one-year deal.
It's hard to hate Toby. For all the absolutely dumb things he's done, it's still hard to hate Toby because he's a magnificent footballer.
It would be incredible, as you say, for him to hit that 300 as the first giant to do so.
Got a bit to go to get there, but he's getting closer.
It'd be incredibly deserving, wouldn't it, after everything he's been through up there. Hey, another interstate player who attracts the spotlight and is known to give a little bit back on occasion, of course, is Dane Zorko, Ralphie. He is absolutely fuming is probably the way to put it, and putting it lightly, about the fine he received back in round 19. But you can tell us a bit about that one.
So he's called it a witch hunt, the fact that he was fined that $3,000. Who was he fined by? His former CEO and Greg Swan. It was always going to be a Brisbane player that saw him penalising someone early on. Here's the backstory. So he used the F and the C bombs to match day officials, which is hard to defend. He was coming off the ground against the Western Bulldogs. He's shocked that Hugh Jackson was only fined a few weeks back for a knee to his guts. He was not suspended. He also feels that when the Lions played Geelong back at GMHBA Stadium, Max Holmes let loose a pretty strong spray as he was running off, again, to those match day officials. So no one can defend the conduct of Zorko. He just feels that others are not subjected to the same scrutiny. I can understand that, but let's face it, a bit like Toby Green, when you have so many of these precedents, so many of these things, you just got to be squeaky clean because people will be on the lookout for you.
Does he kind of have a point? I mean, he has had his moments, I know, throughout the journey, but...
I think he probably does in that sense. But as Ralphie says, when you live by the sword, sometimes it's going to come back and bite you.
It's been a big sword as well. It's been a machete almost.
It has throughout the entire career, and the same with Toby as well.
Yeah. Now, big long-term contracts, Ralphie. We're hearing the word trigger a lot, and these, shorter deals like are being talked about with Nazaya Wanganeen-Miller or Harley Reid. A short deal that then could potentially trigger the monster deal. What do the AFL actually make of these? Because to me, it sounds like big numbers and big dollars, and are they actually going to be seen through? So
in short, the AFL actually doesn't allow these deals. So Harley Reid might sign 2 years and then with a 9-year trigger, it's an opt-in trigger. So it means it gives him an escape clause, but it also guarantees that money. So I can tell you the AFL, when clubs go to them, say, it's just not happening. So they actually are handshake deals, or to be more precise, managers and players come up with what they call letters of intent, and they put them in those deals. So Cozzy Pickett, very keen to sign a 4-year deal with a 5-year trigger, a bit of an escape clause if he was homesick. His manager, Anthony Vanderbilt, went to the AFL and the AFLPA, and they said, it just doesn't happen. So as a result of that, what he did was just sign that 9-year guaranteed year deal at $1.4 million. It requires a lot of really good faith And as some player managers have said to me, well, what happens if a club CEO and the football boss and the coach all move on?
Which is likely.
Which is possible. So it's never been breached. If you come from a powerhouse stable, you're probably more safeguarded because if you're not going to do over that player manager. But again, all those triggers out there that we've just assumed are guaranteed money, they're not guaranteed money at all. Now, the games-based triggers, you play 30 games over 2 years, you get a third year. They are allowed because they are something that you can objectively measure. But, yeah, the other ones are effectively handshake deals.
So it sounds a bit like, the famous Travis Cloke phrase, doesn't it? It's all sort of smoke and shadows behind the windows. I'm sure if any of these players walked into a bank, it's not the sort of thing that you're going to say, yeah, well, I've kind of got this deal that might happen in a year or two.
Yeah, it's a 2-year deal, and I want to sign a $1 million or $2 million mortgage there as well. So Mac Andrew, his deal, game-based trigger. It's actually a game-based trigger. It's been assessed as an opt-in trigger, but if he plays something between 40 or 50 games in those first 4 or 5 years, that's when he gets a specific deal rather than a handshake deal.
Now, real contracts and real players, real-time scenarios. Of course, there's still so much to play out over the next couple of months, Macca, on the trade front. There's a little bit of almost a merry-go-round looming with the big men in the game, isn't there? The ruck-around, if you were.
The ruck merry-go-round, it's got everything, hasn't it?
There was a huge win at the Saints, and a man who was central to it, of course, was Rowan Marshall. There's been so much talk about him and Tom De Koning. What's the latest with Big Rowan?
Yeah, well, I can tell you that St Kilda plans to play hardball if Rowan Marshall decides. I'm opting out. TDK's coming, I'm opting out. I'm going to Geelong or wherever. They're very keen to make sure that both of them, they want both rucks there. One playing a bit of forward and one playing a bit in the ruck there as well. He really did nothing to dispel those, trade speculation, did he, when he spoke on Monday? He was, as you say, central to that passage of play. We know the Cats, and there's a couple of other clubs really interested. They're really keen for a ruckman as well. Then maybe even the Saints could look at offering a sweetener, in a sense. For Rowan Marshall. We know that he's got that contract that goes on, but he's got 2 more to run. So he's 29, he's getting older a little bit now. So you look at that, that's extra year sweetener might be the way to go. So it's going to be fascinating, Ralphie.
So, Macca, every club always says this at the start of the trade period. Every club always says we want to keep him, and clearly from his statement, we feel like he'd like to go. So your point is that this is not just a paper talk. This is him actually saying we will hold the line for one of our very good players. So let's face it, when you look at the best and fairest results, has had many top 3, top 5 results compared to Tom De Koning.
Well, he's had 4, Ralphie, so 4 top 10 results over that period of time. We can see these results here.
So they'll hold the line. You're adamant that they will actually hold the line.
They'll go right to the line. And I think at this stage, they see... Their theory is that they've got a very small forward line, that they need some height, that they haven't got a lot of height there. We know with King, whether he gets back, we hope he does. We hope he gets back and plays a lot of footy, but they don't have a lot of tall forwards, and so they think it can really work. And as you've spoken about before, Paddy Ryder and Rowan Marshall formed a pretty cohesive group as a ruck forward bracket there. Can Tom De Koning do that with a bit of forward and a bit of ruck? That's the fascinating thing, I think. But at the moment, they are adamant that Rowan Marshall, regardless of what he wants to do, is going to stay.
Could he actually be forgiven, though, for, not feeling unloved? But all the talk has been all season about Tom De Koning, and for him to be sitting there going, well, I'm here too, and as you say, I'm pretty handy.
Well, when you look at TDK, he's being offered 1.7. Rowan Marshall in the Herald Sun rich list last year, Ralphie, was between 700 and 800. That's $1 million difference. When you look at that, that's
if you're going to be ruthless and offer 1.7 to TDK, you are then similarly ruthless and say, Rowan, we know your ego is bruised. You will stay at this football club. Now, if it doesn't work, if it becomes a Max Gawn and Brodie Grundy situation, you can reconsider it when he's 30. You still get a quality pick for him. I watched TDK on the weekend from close up in the boundary for Fox Footy. It looked like he checked out. Now, he played a lot forward, so in those the first 18 and 19 rounds of the season, we might even show you that split, he was predominantly playing in the ruck, and now he's effectively 50-50 with Mark Pitnet coming back in. He walked from contests. Like, everyone else was sprinting away, and he just looked like a battered and bruised and deflated player who has already made his decision up. So the Carlton view, I spoke to them today, it's like, well, he hasn't told us he's leaving, so we can't not play him. I thought it was really strange that that Mark Pitnet was so good against Max Gawn and then so good in the first half, and they subbed him out and they said, well, he's a great team player. They need to find out if Mark Pitnet is the kind of player who can hold down their first ruck next year.
So you're telling me there's a chance aspect as well?
Yeah.
The dumbest. I spoke to Tom De Koning in the rooms. He is really battling for form. He concedes that he's struggling. This is a new role for him, playing in a forward split in the ruck. He hasn't really done it before.
He's played ruck, hasn't he?
He's played ruck, and that's where he sees himself playing. So it's going to be fascinating to see how that works with a Rowan Marshall. But at the moment, he's really down in form. He said he's learning the craft of playing forward, which is interesting for a guy who's been been around as long as TDK has.
Ralphie, you had a front row seat to him. The way that you put it is that he has checked out. If I'm a Carlton fan sitting at home right now, what I want to know is then who is my team circling? If he's on the way out, who are the big men on our radar?
So revealed today in the Herald Sun website that Ned Reeves is a player of interest for not only Carlton but also Collingwood. So at this stage, the interest is preliminary. So 2 years back, before Lloyd Meek came in, he had 21 games, 590 hit-outs. He looked like a real star on the rise. He's got to find a new home. Lloyd Meek has just been tucked away on a 4-year deal. Now, Collingwood's still nervous about Darcy Cameron.
Why is that deal not done, Ralphie?
They would say that we signed him up, he won a premiership, he's earning good money, it's not great money. At some stage there, they just need to commit and obviously sign him up past 2026 on a fat deal there. But right now, someone like Ned Reeves would be thinking to himself, I need to get out. And so whether that's Collingwood as a backup, whether that's Carlton along with Mark Pitnet or they move him on, yeah, I can understand why clubs are pushing really hard for him because players like Ned Moyle at Gold Coast, he's on a new deal. He's not leaving. You've got to go really hard to try and find out what your backup options are. Let's
stick on the trade front now that you've taken us there. Ned Reeves might not be the only hawk that the rival teams are circling either.
Yeah, Chanko Giat is a really interesting one. He's finally got his body right. He's mostly played AFL, but a little bit as a sub, a little bit out of position at times. 8 senior games and a couple of VFL stints. So he's not thinking trade right now. He's not thinking meeting clubs. He's desperate to play finals football for Hawthorn after a barren run with the injuries and with the form. I think if he was pushed out of this side in September, and we know the draft, the depth is extraordinary, 2 more years on his contract, I think he'd have a little look around and I think there'd be a lot of clubs that think, what's the great position in football these days? That elite, hard-running half-back. Hawthorn have got too many of them, and there's a lot of clubs out there, even like Carlton, who just need a player.
They're desperate for it. They're second worst in the comp, Ralphie, from defensive to inside 50.
Yeah, so maybe someone like CJ or someone of that ilk is someone they'd be desperately looking for.
Yeah. Macca, there's a young Bulldog who's also attracting a bit of attention.
Yeah, and he's only played 3 games, but it feels like we talk about him a lot. Jed Buslinger as well, from WA. I had a really good chat to him, and he's got a year to run on that contract, but he's basically saying, I'm going nowhere. I love this footy club. Quite remarkably, Ralphie, he's working very closely with Liam Jones. The bloke who's, he's keeping Liam Jones out of the team at the moment. So he's really enjoying his time. He lives with Buku and is really enjoying the Bulldogs. He said basically the fact that he's played 49 games in the VFL and only 3 in the AFL, he thinks that that's going to hold him in good stead going forward. So he wants to stay. He absolutely wants to stay at the Bulldogs, and I think it'll be good. He's still a young player who's developing.
Ralphie, there's so much going on at Melbourne on the field and in the boardroom, according to all of the reports. Judd McVie, though, is a really interesting player, and I know he's a real fan favourite at Melbourne. He's sort of deciding on his future, isn't he?
He's not shooting the lights out because he was in the sandwich, the Naz sandwich, him, of course, and Bailey Fritsch, and they could have spoiled there when Naz marked and then, of course, tied up the game. His contract will push back to the last round of the season now. The Demons are making it hard for him to sign just in regards to their form and the morale and all those things, the uncertainty over the coach. And so, look, he's had that contract in front of him for a full year. It's not that he's out the door, but, yeah, it's a challenge for them to try and secure him. There's so many clubs that are interested in him. Clayton Oliver just has no interest out there. And so I think he'd have to sign take something like a $500,000 pay cut. So it's not that there's a little bit of interest. There's no interest in Clayton Oliver.
So he's staying unless something extraordinary happens.
Yeah, I just can't see any of those clubs there that are saving bickies for the likes of Zach Butters next year would say, let's try and invest $800,000 a year into him as well. So Jake Lever is interested. That everyone's interested in Jake. He's certainly had no contact with any other club. He's invested. It may well be that he's the next captain of this football club if Max Gawn decides that, look, I just can't do it anymore.
Well, you wouldn't blame Max for that, would you?
No, not at all. No, I think he'd be... I was going to say crazy for him to go on, but I tell you what a burden he's had to, be in that football club. So, yeah, big decision for Melbourne to make on Jake. Right now they're saying nothing doing, but there are a lot of clubs out there that are sniffing around him. I think the Western Bulldogs will be one. It'd be crazy not to say, we've got a first-round pick there. We're desperate for key position strength. What about a first-rounder for Jake Lever? And you'd have to consider it.
Just quickly before we move on, Judd McVie, you mentioned there, his interest is from the West. Brandon Starcevich is one we've kept a close eye on here, and it looks like his interest is there too.
Yeah, it's a really weird spot because he's a very well-paid restricted free agent, which means he's probably on $700,000 plus at the Lions. They know how good a stopper he is. So if he leaves the Lions, they've got 2 free agents coming in. Almost certainly Oscar Allen and almost certainly now Sam Draper. So under the net rules, they'd lose him for nothing, which would be a huge blow. West Coast would love him, but they're about to lose Oscar Allen and get picked 2 over all his free agency compensation. So if they got him in, all of a sudden that dribbles back to pick 20. So I think the very likely outcome still is that he's got a 2-year deal on the table at Brisbane. If he wants that to be a long-termer, his manager would get that done. He's got interest in Melbourne, he's got interest out west, but not many leave the Brisbane Lions when they're in such a great premiership window.
What about Dylan Shield?
Yeah, I think most Bombers supporters would have thought this might be the end. He's interested in going into a 15th season with the Bombers, as long as the Bombers want him. And there might be a little bit of other interest for a veteran as well. He played very well on the weekend. He's 32. Says his body's in as good a shape as it's been for quite some time. He's played the split, 10 AFL, 10 VFL. He couldn't get in there a period there when Brad Scott said, no, you're not playing. So he's very, very much open to playing, and it'll be fascinating to see whether anyone's interested or whether the Bombers go, let's give him one more to work with these younger kids.
Just a quick one, John. What's the latest on Ollie Florent? It feels like he's a bit sort of on the out up there at Sydney, doesn't it?
Not a little bit, a lot. So 7 of the last 8 games in the VFL. The only senior game was 40 minutes off the bench as a sub, then back to the VFL, contracted to 2029, a fiercely loyal Sydney man. But his papers aren't stamps, but they've basically shown that they're pushing ahead without him at this stage. Got pace, great kick. If it's not a Carlton, it'll be someone out there that would say Ollie Florent would very much be in our best 22.
We'll be back with plenty more right here on the Midweek Tackle right after this. Now, let's be real. I'm just taking this opportunity to relive a little bit more of Nazia's magic from Sunday. As if we haven't seen it enough, just drink it in. That was just something incredibly special from the young Saint as, of course, he weighs up his contract future. Of course, shedding an unwanted record from the Hawks of 95. We'll have a look at that and plenty more up shortly. We'll see you soon. Welcome back to the Midweek Tackle. John, we saw those magnificent pictures of Nazia Wanganeen-Millera sealing St Kilda's comeback on the weekend. It was 3-decade-old Demons exercised, really. There's been incredible comebacks over the years, but you've got to go a long way back to see one like that.
So 46 points was the record margin. So in 95, Robert Walls's Bears ran down the Hawthorn Footy Club from 45 points down at three-quarter time. What happened? They famously took Peter Knight's Hawks, famously went into the shade of the Gabba Light Tower in ferocious heat. Wallsy pointed it out. They're spineless, they're weak, they're gutless. Ran them down. So Fox Footy's own Daniel Harford played in that game. He said today, I can finally stand in the shade again with confidence. Now, he was laughing. Peter Knights was sacked about 5 games later as well. So, yeah, I think some of those Hawthorn boys who have just had that little record, just sticking in their craws,
off the back.
They were pretty happy, as long with people like you, massive, mad, tragic St Kilda fans on Sunday night.
It was quite enjoyable, I'm not going to lie. We'll keep the lid on it for now. Macca, you've been right across Hawthorn and, of course, their new facility that they're opening soon in Dingley. They're set to leave Waverley, which they purchased for the incredible price of $1.
$1. Best investment ever.
How will they say goodbye to this facility?
Well, they're working on that at the moment. And it's quite awkward, Ralphie, in the sense that they're not sure when their season's going to finish. They'll end up at Dingley, but that'll wait until the end of the men's season. So they're going through a number of scenarios now, whether it's a big final farewell training session, whether it's a family day. But they feel like this place has really helped them, helped save them as a football club. 4 premierships out of there. Some incredible players. So they really want to do something that is worthy of saying goodbye to Waverley.
Now, you have told us that Richmond could call it home as they undergo their punt road development. What is the latest with the coach there, Adam Uze, even if he is coaching out of Waverley at some point?
Yeah, I can tell you, and he might be. I think that's going to happen. The timeline is set for Adam Uze's much-deserved contract extension. So the Tigers will get through the next 4 weeks. They've been, I think a few, not myself, but a few of us thought that they might not win a game this year. They've won 5, potentially with more. So they've seen enough. They know that he's the long-term coach of this football club. So they'll wait for those 4 weeks, and then negotiations will take place as soon as the season's ending. And I don't think it'll take long. I think he's the right man to go forward, and I think it's a massive tick for Richmond, but also for Adam Uze.
Yeah, give him 2 more years to 2028. So the Tom Lynch deal is effectively done as well. They're just working through the tin tacks of that one. It'll be interesting to see at some stage next year if the likes of Sims, Fall, Armstrong will play ahead of him. If that was to be the case, he's very selfless. He'd be aware of it. He's been working so hard in the last couple of weeks. He's due back next week from suspension. So he wouldn't be thrilled about it, but we realise that's his purpose, to try and fast-track these young, exciting kids who have taken massive steps this season. That's
right. Adam Uze said earlier this season he was almost like the godfather of that forward line, and you think he's going to have to take that role even more so next season. Now, of course, AFLW is on the horizon. The season launch next week, and then the season officially kicking off on August 14. I can tell you tonight that superstar Melbourne forward Taylor Harris has currently got round one in doubt. She's battling an ankle injury that she sustained on Saturday. Still remains in a moon boot, guys, days later from that injury. She is going to be assessed again tomorrow. It's looking at this stage like a 2 to 4 weeker, but not ideal, you would have to say. They've got their final practice match this weekend, Ralphie, and considerably in doubt for round one of the stars of the comp.
Again, a third of the home and away season. I understand why the AFL is hastening slowly here, but these people like, Ruby Schleicher, all of a sudden you're 4 weeker and you're done. It's so harsh.
Yeah, it is. So we'll be across that and all of the footy news at codesports.com.au. Thanks so much for joining us on the Midweek Tackle. We'll see you next week.